We shall commence this module by discussing about balance of payment. Balance of payment of a country is a systematic summary statement of a country's international economic transactions during a given period of time, usually a year. It represents a summarized and classified records of all receipts on account of goods exported, services rendered and capital received by residents and payments made by them on account of goods imported and services received from rest of the world and capital transferred to the non-residents or foreigners. Reserve Bank of India. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) defines the term balance of payment more precisely as follows. The balance of payment is a statistical statement that systematically summarizes for a specific time period the economic transactions of an economy with the rest of the world. Transactions for the most part between residents and non-residents consist of those involving goods and services and income, those involving financial claims on and liabilities to the rest of the world, which involve offsetting entries to balance in an accounting sense one-sided transaction. In a general sense, balance of payment of a country records all the economic transactions that take place between the residents of a particular country and the residents of all the other countries of the world during a particular period of time, which is usually taken to be a year. Thus, it covers all types of transactions that a country transacts, such as exports and imports of goods and services, sale and purchase of foreign assets, FDI and portfolio investment, as well as borrowing from and lending to the rest of the world. After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the concept of balance of payments, know about the structure of BOP, get to know about what does disequilibrium in BOP means and what are the various causes that engender a disequilibrium in BOP, get knowledge about the measures through which this disequilibrium can be corrected. Let us now discuss the significance of balance of payments. The study of balance of payments of a country serves the following purposes. It indicates the changing international economic or financial position of a country. It helps in formulation of a country's monetary, fiscal and trade policies. It helps in determining the influence of foreign trade and transactions on the level of national income of a country. It is useful to banks, firms, financial institutions and individuals which are directly or indirectly involved in international trade and finance. It is an economic barometer of nations' progress vis-a-vis rest of the world. Moving on to discuss the components or structure of BOP. A country's BOP can broadly be classified into two types of accounts, viz. Current account and capital account. Current account. The current account of the balance of payments comprises of all those transactions which pertain to trade in goods and services, income and unilateral transfers. The current account records the following items. A. Merchandise exports and imports. Merchandise exports and imports are the most significant items of the current account. In general, it accounts for a substantial portion of total transactions entered in a country's BOP. Usually, exports are estimated on free on board basis, signifying that the transportation cost of insurance, etc. are not included, and imports are estimated on carriage, insurance and freight basis, which signifies that the transportation cost of insurance and freight get included. B. Invisible exports and imports. Invisible exports and imports, also known as services, exports and imports, are another main component of a country's current account. Significant invisible items include travel, insurance, transportation, investment income in the form of profits, dividends, etc. and government not included elsewhere. C. Unilateral transfers. The third component of the current account is unilateral transfers or transfer payments. Unilateral transfers include grants, gifts, etc. either received from abroad or given abroad. They are one-sided transactions without a quid pro quo that has a measurable value. The unilateral transfers could be official or private. Capital account. The capital account of a country's BOP comprises of all those transactions that are related to financial assets in the form of short-term and long-term borrowings and lending, and the transactions related to private and official investments. To state it otherwise, the capital account records the international movements of loans and investments and depicts a change in a country's position regarding the foreign assets and liabilities. The capital account majorly comprises of the following. A. Borrowing from and lending to foreign countries. Borrowings from foreign countries are credit entries since they signify receipts from foreign nations. Lending to foreign nations are debit entries since they signify payments to the foreign nations. This lending or borrowing could be of the short term, that is up to 1 year, or long term, that is more than 1 year. Borrowing from and lending to foreign countries could also be called as net sale of assets to foreigners and net purchases of assets from foreigners. B. Direct investment and portfolio investment. Direct investment is investment in enterprises located in one country but effectively controlled by the residents of another country. Mostly direct investments take place in the form of investment in subsidiaries or branches by parent companies situated in some other country. Portfolio investment signifies buying foreign securities which do not involve any claim on ownership or control of foreign companies. In other words, borrowing from foreign countries and direct and portfolio investment by foreign countries represents capital inflows, whereas lending to foreign nations and direct and portfolio investment in foreign nation represents capital outflows. In a broader sense, real or income generating transactions are recorded into current account of BOP, while capital or financial transactions are recorded into the capital account of BOP. Other components. Apart from the above mentioned two main accounts, a country's BOP also records some other transactions like transactions with IMF, SDR allocations, errors and omissions, and official settlements or reserve account. Next, we shall discuss the disequilibrium in balance of payments. Albeit the credit and debit sides are written balanced in the BOP, it may not always remain balanced. Very often, either the debit side exceeds the credit side or the credit side exceeds the debit side, which engenders an imbalance in the BOP account, which is referred to as disequilibrium. Surplus in BOP. When the autonomous receipts, that is credits, are greater than autonomous payments, that is debits, the balance of payment will be in surplus or favorable. To state it otherwise, if total credits exceed total debits in the current and capital account, including errors and omissions, then the balance of payment will set to be in surplus. This surplus is settled with an equal amount of net debit in the official reserves account. Deficit in BOP. When the autonomous receipts, that is credits, are smaller than autonomous payments, that is debits, the balance of payments will be in deficit or unfavorable or adverse. To state it differently, when total debits exceed total credits in the current and capital accounts, including errors and omissions, then the BOP is said to be in deficit. This deficit is settled with an equal amount of net credits in the official reserve account. Types of disequilibrium. Disequilibrium in the balance of payments can be categorized as follows. First, temporary disequilibrium. Temporary disequilibrium in the form of deficits or surpluses tends to last for a short span of time. They are the result of temporary alterations in the economy like crop failure, seasonal fluctuations, effect of weather on agriculture production, etc. Such disequilibrium may occur once in a while and gets automatically corrected. It does not pose a serious problem for a country. Second, fundamental disequilibrium. There is no precise definition of the term fundamental disequilibrium. Economists generally define fundamental disequilibrium as a deep-rooted persistent deficit or surplus in the BOP of a country. It is a chronic BOP deficit according to IMF. It is of long-term nature and an issue of grave concern for the country. Third, cyclical disequilibrium. Cyclical fluctuations in the business activity also lead to balance of payment disequilibrium. Cyclical disequilibrium occurs because trade cycles follow different routes and patterns in different nations. Different countries follow different stabilization programs and differences in prices and income elasticities of demand for imports. Structural disequilibrium. Structural disequilibrium occurs as a result of structural changes in the economy. Some of the structural changes would include changes in technology, changes in taste and preferences, changes in long-term capital movements, etc. Let us now understand the causes of disequilibrium in balance of payment. First, population growth. Most countries experience acceleration in the population, and in some like India and China, the population is not only large but increases at a faster rate. Imports become imperative to satisfy the needs of increasing population base. Second, development programs. Developing countries which have embarked upon planned development programs require importing capital goods, some raw materials which are not available at home, and highly efficient and skilled manpower. To pursue long-term development, imports of these items for quite a long time become necessary, which engenders the BOP deficit. Third, demonstration effect. It has been seen that people in developing countries try to adapt to the consumption pattern of the people in developed nations, due to which their import tends to increase. If the exports do not rise at the same time, the balance of payments might become unbalanced. Fourth, natural factors. Sometimes natural factors such as floods, famines, etc. can adversely affect the agricultural and industrial production in a particular year. Due to the low level of production, the country will be able to export less and will need to import more, thus causing disequilibrium in the BOP. Fifth, cyclical fluctuations. Trade cycles such as boom, recession, etc. can affect the balance of payment by influencing the level of a country's export. For instance, in case of boom in the market, the exports of a country will get an enhancement due to the increased demand from the other countries. This will cause disequilibrium in the BOP. Sixth, inflation. Due to rapid economic development, income and price levels experience an increment. Due to this, imports get increased while exports get reduced, thus causing a deficit in the BOP. Seventh, poor marketing strategies. The developed nations follow advanced marketing strategies, due to which their exports increases, whereas developing nations experience a deficit due to their poor marketing strategies. Eighth, flight of capital. Speculators tend to withdraw their funds from the developing nations whenever there is any adverse news related to their economy. Due to this, developing nations lose foreign exchange and gold reserves, which the investors invest in more stable economies, that is, in developed nations. This capital movement causes disequilibrium in the developing countries' BOP. Ninth, globalization. Due to globalization, there has been more liberal and open atmosphere for international movement of goods, services and capital. Competition has been increased as a result of globalization of international economic relations. The emerging new global economic order has brought in certain problems for some countries, which have resulted in the BOP disequilibrium. Implications of disequilibrium in BOP. Disequilibrium, surplus or deficit in BOP is considered undesirable for a country. However, the implication of disequilibrium depends on the location or source and duration. In this context, the following generalizations are possible. With respect to the location, it could be said that a surplus in the combined current and capital accounts should be considered desirable for a country, whereas a deficit in the combined current and capital account should be considered as undesirable for the country. With respect to the duration, it could be said that if the disequilibrium is temporary or short term, then it is not much a serious concern for the country. But if the disequilibrium is persistent or long term, then it becomes an issue of grave concern for the country and it needs corrective policy actions. A fundamental disequilibrium in the form of deficit is undesirable because under a fixed exchange rate regime, it forces the country to go for devaluation, while under flexible exchange rates, it causes depreciation in the external value of the currency. It would increase the external debt of the country and may lead to external debt trap. It leads to depletion in forex reserves and again makes the position of the country extremely vulnerable. It makes the country totally dependent on the loans supplied by the international organizations and foreign governments and raises serious doubts about the maintenance of its external sovereignty. It is observed that disequilibrium in the form of surpluses is very rare, while disequilibrium in the form of deficits is a common phenomena. Hence, in practice, the term disequilibrium is normally associated with the deficits in BOP. Now, we shall discuss the measures to correct disequilibrium in BOP. Solutions to correct balance of payment disequilibrium lies in earning more forex through reducing imports or additional exports. Quantitative changes in imports and exports require policy changes. Such policy measures are in the form of monetary, fiscal and non-monetary measures. Some of these methods are explained below. First, monetary measures of correcting the BOP. The various monetary methods used to correct disequilibrium in the BOP are as follows. A. Deflation. Deflation signifies a situation of falling prices. Deflation as a measure can be used to correct disequilibrium in case there is deficit disequilibrium, that is when the country's imports exceeds its exports. There are two ways to effect deflation in the economy, viz. Monetary measures such as bank rate, open market operations, etc. and fiscal measures such as increased taxes, reduced public expenditures, etc. Deflation tends to make domestic goods relatively cheaper to the foreign goods, which increases the domestic exports. Simultaneously, the domestic demand for foreign goods fall due to the increased taxes and reduced incomes, and it results into a decline in the domestic imports. This all will tend to favorably affect our balance of payment position. However, deflation would achieve its intended effect only when the exchange rate do not change in between. B. Change in the exchange rate. Under fixed exchange rate, devaluation means bringing down of the value of domestic currency in relation to the foreign currency through a deliberate attempt by the monetary authorities. While depreciation is effected through the interaction of the market forces, devaluation is enforced through the official and deliberate attempt of the concerned monetary authority. When India's BOP worsened in 1991, IMF suggested devaluation. India devalued its currency by 18 to 20% in terms of various other currencies. The very next year, India experienced a decline in its imports and a rise in exports, thus having the intended effect. Generally, devaluation as a measure is used in case of serious adverse balance of payment situation. Second, under flexible exchange rate, depreciation. Exchange depreciation means decline in the rate of exchange of domestic currency in relation to the foreign currency. This implies that the country is following a flexible exchange rate policy. Suppose the rate of exchange between Indian rupee and US dollar is $1 is equals to 40 rupees. If India experiences an adverse balance of payment with regard to USA, then the Indian demand for US dollar will rise. The price of dollar in terms of rupee will rise. As a result, dollar will appreciate and rupee will depreciate in value of relation to one another. The new exchange rate may be, say, $1 is equals to 50 rupees. This signifies 25% exchange depreciation of the Indian currency. Exchange depreciation will encourage exports and reduce imports because exports will become cheaper and imports will become costlier. Hence, a favorable balance of payment would emerge to pay off the deficit. C. Exchange control. It is an extreme and rare step taken by the monetary authority to enjoy complete control over the exchange dealing. In this situation, the central monetary authority directs all the exporters to relinquish their forex to it, which leads to concentration of forex reserves in the hands of the monetary authority. Simultaneously, the central authority restricts the supply of forex only for essential goods. However, this is only a temporary remedy and not a permanent solution. Second, non-monetary measures of correcting BOP. A deficit country along with monetary measures might adopt some non-monetary measures too, which will either restrict imports or promote exports. These measures have been mentioned below. A. Tariffs. Tariffs are duties or taxes imposed on imports. When tariffs are imposed, the prices of imports would increase to the extent of tariff. This will tend to reduce the desire for imported goods and induce domestic producers to produce more of the import substitutes. The imports of non-essential goods can substantially be reduced through this measure. B. Quantitative restrictions or quotas. Under this system, the government fixes the maximum quantity of a particular commodity that can be imported in a particular period of time. This leads to improvement in the BOP situation by limiting imports. Types of quotas. Tariff or custom quota, unilateral quota, bilateral quota, mixing quota and import licensing. C. Export promotion. Under this measure, the government can resort to some export enhancing measures such as tax incentives to exporters, credit facilities and monetary incentives to exporters, provision of marketing facilities, etc. The government may also help to promote export through exhibitions, trade fairs, conducting marketing research and by providing the required administrative and diplomatic support to cater to the potential markets. D. Import substitution. A country may resort to import substitution to reduce the volume of imports and make it self-reliant. Fiscal and monetary measures can be adopted to encourage industries producing import substitutes. Industries producing import substitutes require special attention in the form of various concessions, which includes tax concession, technical assistance, subsidies, etc. It is generally believed that non-monetary measures are more effective than the monetary measures. Let us now summarize what we have learnt in this module. Balance of payment of a country is a systematic and summarized record of a country's economic transactions with other countries during a particular span of time, generally a year. It shows a classified statement of, first, all receipts from exports of goods and services and capital received by residents. Second, all payments for imports of goods and services and capital transferred to the non-residents or residents of foreign countries. The BOP of country depicts the changing international financial position of the country and supports in formulating the country's monetary, fiscal and trade policies. The BOP is broadly divided into categories: current account and capital account. The current account records all those transactions that pertain to the trade of goods, services and unilateral transfers. On the other hand, the capital account records all transactions in the country's financial assets and private and official investments. To state it otherwise, the capital account depicts the flow of loans and investments and thus depicts a change in country's foreign assets and liabilities. In a broader sense, real or income generating transactions are recorded in current account of BOP, while capital or financial transactions are recorded into the capital account of BOP. In addition to the above mentioned two types of accounts, BOP of a country also records some other transactions like transactions with IMF, SDR allocations, errors and omissions, and official settlements or reserve account. Albeit the credit and debit sides are written balanced in the BOP, it may not always remain balanced. Very often either the debit side exceeds the credit side, which is referred as deficit, or the credit side exceeds the debit side, which is referred to as surpluses, which engenders an imbalance in the BOP account, which is referred to as disequilibrium. Disequilibrium in BOP can be categorized as temporary disequilibrium, fundamental disequilibrium, cyclical disequilibrium, and structural disequilibrium. There are many reasons due to which disequilibrium in the BOP is engendered, such as population growth, development progress, demonstration effect, cyclical effect, and inflation, etc., which can be corrected through monetary measures such as deflation and devaluation, and non-monetary measures such as tariffs and quotas.